would just say yes. I think it's really important that we do the measurements and we take the measurements into consideration and that it starts happening. But we need to start at a completely, we were talking about before, whether it should be something from the government set in place or whether it should be something by the companies set in place. There is already so much work happening right now, and they are already setting it in place, and they have been for the past 10, 12 years already trying to reverse the measurements of how we're producing. They've always been such a conscious and focus on how do you produce more ethically, how do you produce more environmentally correctly, and how do you keep the cost so cheap. But especially if we're looking at just from the perspective of the British fashion industry and the British element, the industry is squeezed. It doesn't matter what part of the industry you are at, you're squeezed to the minimum, like to the point where there is no margins left to have much error done either way you go, which means is why we're actually seeing a lot of the big guys that could have taken these considerations into place. They have to turn the keys because they can't put these measurements into place quick enough in the same time to stay alive and to make sure they're making the money. If you look at, I went to LCF a couple of years ago, and they were really, really strong at trying to put sustainability into every course you were doing, every measurement you had to do, every thought you had to think, you had to consider sustainability. That's where we start. We start by the next generation we're educating and we're putting out into the place. We start by them not having a choice whether or not to be sustainable or not sustainable. We're starting by them having to think, how are you the most sustainable for what the knowledge you have of today? Because tomorrow it would have changed. So from each time we do something, some new ideas creates and some new concepts comes in place, but we have to constantly be on the track of developing these measurements, but also really try to say we have to maintain that people are making the business, because else they die. And then again, you don't have these measurements and you have nobody who can stand in the place who have the money to take it to the next level. White Company is a company to look at. They have a very, very sustainable mindset, from how they're producing, also to how they treating the people and how they are putting everything in place to the point where they've even considered when the workers get their money in the hand, a lot of these workers are females and go home and hand them over to their men who be drunk and beat them up or something. So they actually started looking at how to make sure that the money never made it home, but into the banks and into investing. These kind of things, they should have more voice, and we should be starting putting more focus on these things instead of sitting and bashing out. Try and put focus on the things that is good, that would inspire to do more good, instead of trying to put focus from the press and from the government side on people who's doing bad, because then people be like, oh, the entire industry is terrible. It's not. It's already happening in the good terms. Give the good focus.
I think it's actually interesting what you said about reaching peak consumption, or moving into a sharing economy and moving towards this idea of consuming all the time. Again, I just think about it from a brand's point of view. I listened to a really interesting podcast at the start of the week, actually. It was about a guy who works for Patagonia, and they had a really interesting marketing campaign where they said, they took out an ad in like the New York Times or something about one of their jackets, and they said, don't buy this jacket. And that just really grabbed me, I think. So this is from a big global brand, and they're saying, don't buy our product. I just think that kind of mindset needs to happen across global brands, really. Just this move away from consumption.